Okay, so let's dive into our discussion. Last week, when we made our first podcast, I talked about the concept of living an outstanding life. Good is no longer good enough in this day and age, and I gave a whole bunch of examples, but the crust of the point was this. The difference between good and outstanding is just a little bit extra effort, just a little bit. And typically that extra effort only requires just a few more seconds or even a few more minutes. If you are wanting to raise the bar to be an outstanding spouse, an outstanding husband, an outstanding wife, an outstanding father, mother, if every day we were to just raise the bar a little bit and give a little bit more extra effort, not a lot, just a little bit more eye contact, a little bit more attention. If we just did that once or twice in our day, just a little bit more eye contact, a little bit more attention, force ourselves to not grab the cell phone or to look away. At that moment, we go from being good to outstanding. At work, everybody you work with, whether you have employees, associates, a boss, they've come to expect a certain level of output from you. But if you were to just raise the bar just a little bit in a few areas, you would go to an outstanding level. They will notice immediately, I promise you that. In your relationship with God as well, just a little bit more prayer, a little bit more often, completely changes the game. It'll make an outstanding difference, I promise you. If outstanding is the new bar, you will shock the world. I promise you that. You will shock the world. For most people, good is the standard. Take, for instance, a parking lot at the local grocery store. Typically, if you drive into the parking lot, you will see shopping carts peppered all over the pavement, which is so funny to me because very few people actually walk their shopping cart to where they're supposed to after they unload the groceries from the cart into their car. Typically, they just kind of leave it, which is so funny to me because the average person will probably walk about 2.5 miles in Walmart up and down the aisles looking for, the milk and the meat and the bread. 2.5 miles. And then they get to the parking lot, they unload their groceries, and what do they say to themselves? Not another step. My physical endurance allotted for each day has officially expired. No, 20 more feet to drop this cart off is too many feet. I'm getting in my car. Somebody else can get the cart. It's just hysterical to me. But when you just raise that bar just a little bit, we begin to separate ourselves from everyone else. We just begin to separate ourselves. Now for some new content, I want to talk about two things today. Number one, I want to talk about the power of now. The power of right now. And I also want to talk about, number two, the concept of must-dos. All right, so let's dive into the first one right now. The power of now. Many times you'll have a thought that comes to your mind, an idea, and it is so important that you and I, we execute that thought, we execute that idea as much as we possibly can right then and now. Right now. Because if we don't do it right then and there, certain things begin to happen. And I've got 5 of them real quickly. Number one, procrastination seems to take the glitter off of a great idea. When we look back on it, if we don't act right then and there, we look back on it a few hours later or a few days later, and we look back on it, and all of a sudden, it's not really that great of an idea. And we kind of chuckle and we think to ourselves, man, I really got juiced up over that whenever I had the thought for the first time. But now that I think about it, it's not really that great of an idea. Number two, if we don't act right now, the sea of forgetfulness is full of brilliant ideas. I've got a brother of mine that he's got a tremendous gift. he can hear a joke from a comedian and remember that joke forever. So he's got this huge catalog in his mind of all these jokes, and I keep on looking at him. I'm like, Nathan, how do you remember this stuff? But for us mere mortals, when we have a great idea, if we don't act on it right then and there, a lot of times that brilliant idea just kind of drowns in the sea of forgetfulness. Number 3, the third reason why we've got to act right now is a great idea requires passion, and passion leaks. So when you have a great idea, you've got to move on it some way, somehow put it into action. Now, typically, if you have a great idea, you're driving down the street in the car, or somebody's talking to you, and while they're talking to you, you're not even listening to what they're saying. All of a sudden, you have this great idea. So a lot of times, the context that you're living in that moment prevents you from acting right then and there. But I want to challenge you to act as quickly as you possibly can, because you're never going to be more passionate about that idea than you are the moment you have it. So maybe you open up your laptop and you type it. Maybe you open up the notes in your phone and you type those notes, or you talk into a voice recorder. But your passion will leak if you don't act on it right then and there. Number 4 is divine inspiration is often the source of a brilliant moment. A lot of times it's God speaking to your heart. A lot of times it's God putting it in your mind. I'll give you a quick example. I had this thought that it just kind of came to my mind that me and this particular person, we kind of had a heated exchange. And I thought to myself, man, I should really probably call that person and ask their forgiveness and just say, hey, man, life is too short. I'm not even mad anymore. I don't even remember the details anymore. I just want you to know, hey, I'm sorry for anything I did. I just want you to know that. And so I had that thought a couple weeks ago, and I didn't move on it right then and there. I should have called that person right then and there and picked up the phone, but I didn't. And then when I thought about it a couple days later, I was like, nah, I ain't calling that guy. He's a bum anyway. And all of a sudden, the idea of asking somebody to forgive me, or telling somebody that, hey, I'm not really concerned about what you did wrong. I'm more concerned about what I did wrong. And so I just want you to forgive me. But I just want you to know, if anything comes to my mind that you did wrong in the process or said wrong, I'm not even weighing it at all. I'm just pushing it out of my mind. I'm not going to remember it ever again. You've got too many great qualities that I'm going to let overshadow those moments. So I just want you to know that. But when I sat on it, didn't move right then and there. And I'm telling you, I talked myself out of calling him. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell this guy I'm sorry. He's a bum. Why would I tell him I'm sorry? He's a bum. It's amazing on how a lot of times our brilliant moments are divinely inspired. And if I wait, it becomes difficult to tap into that inspiration again. And a lot of times an inspiring idea will link to another idea, that will link to another idea, that will link to another idea. And you'll look back weeks later or months later and you'll say, man, I think God was in that. Number 5, immediate action gives no room for fear. You and I are at our best when we are full of energy. When we're full of energy, when we're full of excitement, we are at our best. But a lot of times we start overthinking, and overthinking creates shadow problems that are not even there. We start overthinking, well, this person is going to think that person is going to think this. Well, if I do that, I don't know if I'm going to have enough money to actually pull it off. And I don't know if I've got enough resources, or here's another one. I don't know if I'm even good enough to be able to make what I'm dreaming about happen. So we start overthinking it. And these problems are not even there. And the truth of the matter is sometimes while we're overthinking it, we're thinking about a problem that has to do with a person that we really want to impress, a person that we want them to think well of us. And so we're unsure if we actually flesh this idea out, will that person think well of us? The truth of the matter is that we think that people are thinking about us more than they actually are. In reality, we think people think about us as much as we think about us. But they're not thinking about us. They're thinking about themselves, wondering if we are thinking about them. Now, if you missed that, I'm not going to be able to say it all over again. You'll have to hit the 15-second rewind button. But I think that you got my point. I want to say this. That was the 5 points that I wanted to say about the power of now. A lot of times, we don't want to execute or start until we have every single step of the process figured out. There's a term called course correction that I believe will be really freeing for you if you fall into the category of overthinking. I know when I heard the term, it was incredibly freeing for me. Course correction, for an example, would be when NASA launches a rocket to the moon. Now, the cool thing about it is that when NASA launches a rocket to the moon, they really aren't even too concerned about are they on a straight path to the moon or not. In fact, a rocket to the moon is off course most of the time. The only thing that NASA is concerned about is let's get into motion. Let's get off the ground. Let's have a successful launch off the launching pad. Let's get moving. Let's burst with some gusto here. Let's move. And then once they get past the atmosphere, then they begin to course correct and course correct and course correct. So when you launch a good idea or when you do something, you may find 3 or 4 weeks from now that the original idea is not even what you're running with at that moment. It actually gave birth to a better idea. And that's completely fine. You'll find that you'll course correct 75 times. But the good news is that you're moving forward aggressively. And that's really exciting. Point number 2 is the must-dos. I was thinking about this the other day. There are should-dos, have-to-dos, and must-dos. Should-dos are things like this. I really should start and finish a book every month. I should read 12 books a year. Every single month, I start and finish a book. That's a should-do. I really should do that. I would be a better person if I did that. And then there are have-to-dos. A have-to-do is I have to wake the kids up tomorrow morning to get ready for school. I have to go to work. I have to give my place of employment a minimum of 40 hours. I have to do these certain things. And then there are the must-dos. Now, these must-dos have got to trump the should-dos and have-to-dos. The must-dos are the things that will determine whether or not you are at peace when you die. Are you at peace with how you lived your life? Are you at peace with the contributions that you've made? Are you at peace with the relationships with God and man? Are you at peace with these things? Are you at peace knowing that you completed the assignment of why you were put on this earth to begin with? These are must-dos, and must-dos must trump should-dos and have-to-dos. And if it is a must-do, you know exactly when you are going to do that task or fulfill that moment each day. Because what is most important to you must consume you. And a lot of times, to encourage you, the must-dos only take a few moments. A few moments of intense focus, a few moments of intense output. Maybe only you need to focus on it for 3 or 4 minutes each day. But it is intense. It is intense focus, intense output. I hope that inspires you today. That's all I've got to share with you until next week. But this is what I want to say as I close. Everyone is going to spend eternity somewhere. So stay ready.